This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermastermindgroup.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and as always, it's my job to help you eliminate chaos and maximize profits in your construction business. Today, I have a conversation for you with my friend and client, Michael Moore. He's the owner of Waterton Construction in Dallas, Texas. And here's what you're going to get out of this podcast. You're going to hear some advice from a couple of guys who have been fired, the benefits of letting go of your business, two things Michael has done to increase his revenue 26% year over year. Maybe the most important thing we talk about, two places you need to go if you're ever in McKinney, Texas, how your definition of success is up to you, and the right way to define success, why Michael says success and failure aren't too far apart. We talk about switching channels when it comes to your mindset. We dig into some of the myths around hiring high-level talent and the truth about leading people who are better than you at certain tasks. Limiting beliefs around attracting talent and growing your team, the difference between building houses or building projects and building a business that builds projects. And Michael shares a few keys that he feels like he's cracked the code on when it comes to selling. Really good stuff. A lot of great content here. You're gonna enjoy this conversation. I have a couple of resources I want to share with you before we get into that interview. Here you go. The owner of an electrical contracting business sent me an email a while back that said, and I quote, "Here's a real-life example of the dangers of sending employees to the supply stores. As you can see, this is not a profit bleed, it's a profit gusher." He has GPS tracking on his trucks, so he ran a report showing how much time his vehicles were spending at the supply store, and he said, quote, "The data was staggering to me." How much time is your team wasting every week driving and shopping? And how much is that costing you? Add up the cost of labor, fuel, maintenance, plus the opportunity cost, which is the revenue that you're missing out on. Well, today I'd like to introduce you to Curri, C-U-R-R-I. Think Uber for last mile delivery of construction supplies. You can use the Curri platform to get matched with drivers who have the vehicle you need to move the materials you need, whether it's a small box, a big box, lumber, pipe, pallets, whatever you need. If this sounds interesting to you, visit constructionleadingedge.com/Curri. That's C-U-R-R-I, and get $40 of free credit when you sign up. Stay out of stores with Curri. That's constructionleadingedge.com/Curri, C-U-R-R-I. As a contractor, you manage a ton of jobs every day, and trying to keep up to speed and ensure work actually gets done takes up way too much time. And that's where Company Cam comes in. Every photo and video your guys take at a job is automatically organized by location and instantly synced from the field to wherever you are. Now, you'll know exactly what's happening across your company, be able to communicate more effectively, and cover your butt from future claims. Document your jobs, communicate with your crews, and protect your company, all with Company Cam, the only app every contractor needs. Get started today at companycam.com/CLE. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Michael Moore from Waterton Construction in McKinney, Texas. Enjoy. Michael Moore, welcome to the Construction Leading Edge podcast. How's it going today?
Great, Todd. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, my pleasure. I think if you're being honest, it took a little bit of little cajoling to get you to be on the podcast, but I'm really glad you are. So we've known each other for a year and a half or so, maybe coming up on year and a half, maybe close to 2 years. But we'll get into that later on. Let's talk about your business. Tell us where you're located. Well, first of all, name of your company, where you're at, what you do, and tell us a little bit about your business.
You bet. Our company is called Waterton Construction Group. We actively went into business in 2013. We are a hardscape contractor in the Dallas-Fort Worth, as we call the DFW Metroplex. It's about a 100-mile diameter circle that we cover, a lot of geography. We predominantly do hardscape work, site services work in residential land development, and some isolated multifamily and commercial projects as well. We have staff that varies with work demand from about 7 to 9 employees. And we service a lot of residential developers and commercial developers as well.
Yeah, so the DFW market is pretty crazy, just based on the size and the growth. How would you describe the growth of the housing market where you're at right now?
Well, I think Dallas, when I refer to Dallas, I'm talking Dallas and Fort Worth, but just because I live on the Dallas side, typically I just refer to it as Dallas. But this market has been really, ever since the economic downturn, the recovery has just been on fire. And even before the downturn in 2008 through 2010, 2011, it was on fire then too. We're typically, I would say, a year or two behind any dips in the economy. We're not immune to the pandemics. We're not immune to, economic problems, but we are in kind of a bubble. We've got, no state income tax. We have property taxes are a little high, but low cost for residential homes, low cost of living typically, which is increasing right now. But traditionally, if you look at it across the nation, we're one of the lower markets there. So it's a desirable place, company friendly. A lot of people coming in from different states, predominantly from the West Coast in Texas. So the market here is just, it's really on fire, and which I'm thankful for. It also provides some challenges that, good markets provide new opportunities, new challenges to overcome, and growth opportunities. But you just got to be careful. You don't get out over your skis too much and get away from your purpose.
Yeah. So let's talk about your ideal project. You're working for, say, a single family home developer. They're going to come in, take down a parcel of land. Mm-hmm. How many, if you think about your ideal project size, how many lots are they building? How many lots are they building in this development?
Well, a lot of these are multi-phase projects that will go on for years, or master plan communities. Some of them are not. Some of them are multi-phase, but they're just 2 or 3 phase projects. I have, for example, one project on the Dallas side of town that I'm doing for a residential developer right now that's got 4 phases in it, and each phase will have approximately 400 lots in each phase. That'll be probably, if the market stays where it is right now, probably about 2 years to build out, 2.5 years to build all 4 phases out. That project is ideal. We've got about a mile long of 6-foot tall masonry screening perimeter wall. We call it thin wall is what we call it, that we build. We do the turnkey concrete masonry construction. We have about a mile of hike and bike trail that we pour, a playground. We have community sidewalks that are in the common areas of the developments, not for the homes, but for the land development phases and things like that. We do a lot of iron and wood fence. So that project is ideal. Long stretches of brick wall and sidewalks and fences. That's the name of the game for a success for us.
Yeah, I've only been to that area twice, but they love screen walls and fences around all their developments. And speaking of which, I have you to thank for a couple of things. One, bringing me to McKinney, Texas, which is a fantastic town.
It's
My
great.
wife loves it. It's on the list of places to move to. I haven't been there in the summertime. I have a feeling it might be a little uncomfortable in the summer. But
Call it the blast furnace. It's pretty warm.
well, you should probably not be on the tourism committee.
I think the city of McKinney may have just nixed me from any marketing campaigns I may have in the future.
Yeah, well, I can tell you it's fantastic in March and October. So the things I have to thank you for: number one, bringing me to McKinney, where I was exposed to two things. One was this place called Sugar Bacon. And they have I don't even know what you'd call it, a dish, a plate called Sugar Bacon. So if you're ever in McKinney, Texas, find the restaurant called Sugar Bacon and order the Sugar Bacon. And as I recall, they are like, imagine a 1.5 inch cube of watermelon next to a 1.5 inch cube of pork belly with some other stuff on there. Fantastic. And then there's a little place called Rye, where I was introduced to a rye old fashioned, which changed my life. So I have you to thank for that.
Absolutely. Both places have great old fashions. I was at Sugar Bacon about a month ago and had a great smoked old fashioned there. It was pretty yummy.
So that's the kind of stuff you need to talk about. Like talk old fashions, talk Sugar Bacon. Let's talk less about that blast furnace stuff, right?
Oh yeah. And if people could see me, they know that I like me some Sugar Bacon. So
all right. So let's jump into some of the questions. One of my favorite questions that's pretty enlightening is about failure. So the question is, how has a failure or what appeared to be a failure at the time set you up for later success? Like, for example, me personally, when I look at, there were a couple of probably 2 or 3 big failures. One was when my own business, quote, failed. Another time was when I got fired suddenly. Those were the pivotal moments for me that led me to where I am. And if those things hadn't happened, I would be in a very different place. But what about you? How has an apparent failure or something that felt like a failure at the moment set you up for later success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that this will kind of let people into my world a little bit about my mentality of our business. And I think failure is a key component to our current success and future success. I have a different outlook on failure now than I did when I started my business. I believe that now, different than when I started, that, you haven't failed unless you've quit. And I think that when I started, I think it was survival mode. Trying to get this thing off the ground. You have this great ideal of what your business should look like. Oh, it's going to be this. Places I worked before, if I could do it different, it would be so much better my way. And then you learn, and then you have some short-term failures. And as long as you don't quit through those, you have the potential to have great success by whatever you define success to be. But specifically to your question, I think that one of the hardest failures that at the time I saw as failure that we changed into success. And I say we, my wife and I include Reagan in that too, and our team at Waterton, but was I got fired before we started our business. I had never been fired from a job in my life. It just wasn't even on my radar that could happen. I always felt that if you put enough effort in, even if you had some trouble or some complications, if you put enough effort and hard work and asked the right questions, you could survive anything. And I was a top producer at the previous company I worked for. The long story short, there was a change in ownership, and within 6 to 9 months after that ownership changed, I was presented by the president some questions, and at the time it was about some complications we were going through at the company, and I thought he was coming to me for help, and I asked him, I said, "Are you asking me to help you with this, or are you suggesting that I'm part of the problem?" And I never got that answer. And I, to this day, still don't understand it, but I was let go, and that was traumatic for me. So when that happened, I had been in residential home building for many years before that and kind of worked my way through the ranks there. So I went back to what I knew, which was remodeling for a while, did some high-end remodel for about 18 months and decided if I wanted to get back into the hardscape game or not. That's the company that I was working for before. It was probably the largest hardscape company in our market. So I decided to get back in March of 2013. And I always tell people that getting fired was the hardest blessing I ever received, because at the time I thought my world was over. Things were crashing down. I knew I'd be okay. I didn't know how, but if I was always too comfortable to try what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to run my own business. I really wanted to have my own construction business and give it a chance, but I was always just comfortable enough that I never took that leap. Well, I got pushed off the cliff and I had to flap my wings pretty fast. So I figured it out. We dove in, and Reagan and I just hung on to each other and took off after it. I think that's one of them. I think through that, going through the challenges of that, you go through different things. Our projects are relative to a home. I would consider them fairly medium to moderate size revenue projects. So it requires a lot of cash. We don't get deposits on projects before we start, so we have to cash flow our projects. And as you go through cash flow challenges and trying to seek funding for that and how you overcome that, I've learned a whole lot about how to manage cash flow in an honest and respectful way and to communicate through any challenges. And I'm a lot better for it. I'm able to manage money, make money, stretch further. So that's a success that felt like failure at times too. And I think through that, with all those stresses, just comes a perspective change I had as we were facing some challenges. I always, I'm a man of faith, and for whatever different people listening if they may or may not be, I don't know, but this applies to me. So I'll just talk about my experience. And, when we had a situation where I didn't understand why things were going the way they were, I used to always pray, God, bless our business so we can bless your kingdom. And we wanted to do that. There's nothing wrong with that prayer, but it kind of had a paradigm shift one day in my truck going through a stressful situation, and it hit me. And it was just like, number one, it's all his anyway. And I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking with the right perspective. And when it was my business, I carried all the weight of that. And the paradigm shift for me was that it's really not mine. It's always been his, but I've held on to it like it was mine. So my prayer changed to, Lord, let me be a steward of the business that you've given me to manage, me and Reagan to manage. And when I had that paradigm shift and realized it's his for success or failure, not just me, it kind of took the burden of those things away of me having to force it out and crank it out and be everything to everybody. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but it definitely was a paradigm shift for me that kind of changed my mindset and propelled us forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to getting fired. That that hits really hard. I've been fired at least twice that I can think of. Actually, 3 times. Laid off. Well, let's just call it what it is. Fired. Right.
Right.
We don't need you anymore. We can live without you. Right. So for me, that hit pretty hard because, I at least thought, maybe I was delusional, but I thought I was a pretty top producer. And then when somebody comes along and says, you know what, I think we're going to be okay without you, or we'll actually be better off without you. That hurts. And that pushes on some of those primal emotional buttons of rejection and criticism. And then there's always the fear of poverty. And personally, it hurt. And it took a while to recover from that. What advice would you give to somebody that maybe has dealt with that recently? Like now that you've been through that, you've come through on the other side, any guidance or advice you would give them on how to manage their emotions right now?
Yeah, I do. I think what I would probably tell people is focus on where you get your purpose. Seek out where you think you need to be working what you need to be passionate about. Because sometimes I think we get so focused, whether it's in our business, and it's easy to do, or in our job, or if you're working for somebody else, that we get so tied into our self-worth being tied to what we produce and what we think we perform for others. And there is, I think everybody takes pride in what they want to do. They want to do a good job and deliver a product or a service at the top of their ability, and as they should. But when it transitions from a desire to do right, and you've done right, don't beat yourself up because somebody else doesn't see the value you bring. I think even you and I have talked about this in the past, Todd. Sometimes it's not being let go; sometimes it's being set free, and you just have to have the right mindset. And it's really hard after the rejection to have that right mindset. You question, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? And looking back now, 8 years removed, roughly. I can be self-critical and I can say, maybe it was this, maybe I did that, maybe I didn't perform as well here, or maybe I got complacent with this, or whatever. There are those, I'm sure there are things I could have done better, but at the same time, it doesn't help you to sit there and wallow in what happened. My daughter plays competitive soccer. Her soccer coach, Matt. Hey, Matt, if you ever listen to this, he always has a saying, to the girls after soccer game, if they lose, what happens if you drive a car and you're looking in the rear view mirror? You have a crash because you're not looking where you're going. Find a purpose, focus on where you want to go, find out what that needs to be for you. That's going to be something that you're passionate about, something that you enjoy doing, and something that you don't mind waking up in the morning to do. That's going to get you out of bed and keep you driving forward with a passion. Because if you have a passion for it, you'll do the work. If you don't, and you just kind of like it, I don't want to say you're going to fail, but it's going to be a hard road.
Yeah, that's good advice. Just keep in mind, what I heard you say was take ownership of the situation. Did you have something to do with it? Chances are, if I look back now, I'm like, yeah, one of those, I got myself fired, probably.
Sure.
Because of the way I behaved, the way I've developed a lot more emotional intelligence, I think, since 2010. And the other thing I heard you say, which I completely agree with, is it's very possible that you're just being pushed out onto the next thing. So don't fight it. I don't know how to describe this, but after being in this business and career stuff for 24 years now, I guess, I found that looking back on it, there have been times when I was just being pushed out of things to something better. And I also looked back at things I tried to create, things I tried to make happen. And it was almost like the more I tried to make things happen, the more I pushed them away from myself. And the best opportunities just came to me. And sometimes I fought them tooth and nail when I was trying to be pushed into the next thing. But now I'm just much more, I don't know how to describe it, but I don't strive for things as much. And I just, Proverbs, what is it? Proverbs 3, I believe it's, don't lean on your own understanding, but acknowledge him in all your ways and he will direct your paths. And he'll put you where you need to be. And that's
absolutely. I think that's the point of that paradigm shift for me. I think that hits the nail on the head from that example I tried to give earlier. You just probably did it much more eloquently than I did. But the, that shift from bless our business to let me be a steward of the business you've given me to manage. And since I had that shift, what I realized is I work a lot harder for him than myself. And I don't give myself the excuses. So, and for my wife and for my family, I work hard for them too, but there is some type of release for me when I realize that this is bigger than myself. And if it's not God or whatever that keeps you focused on something beyond yourself is important. Because I just firmly believe that when I had that moment of realization, it was a release for me, not of responsibility, because my responsibility changed from squeezing this thing so tight and try, like you say, and work. I'm gonna try harder. I just think of like a little kid picking up a puppy, and they want to love it so much they just squeeze it harder and harder, and the puppy's like dying, trying to get away because they're being smothered. And that's what I would do. I would hang on to things so tightly that I would try to squeeze production, squeeze profitability, squeeze success out of everything. But it was me doing it. And when I realized it's his, and I had that paradigm shift that I was able just to let it be, and like, okay, we had some jobs that were critical for our path of success. I thought that were in the plan that we were a low bidder on, apparent low bidder on, that we weren't awarded. And I thought that was the plan to get us back on track with where we needed to be. And I prayed the prayer, God, this is your business. Let me be a steward. If that's not the job that I was supposed to have, bring me the one that we were. And 2 days later, I get a phone call out of the blue from a developer I hadn't talked to in a year and a half and had never given me work. Out of the blue, she calls me and says, hey, are you available? I said, yes. Do you have crews that could start within 30 days? Yes, I've got 2 projects. They were half the revenue, but the same profit as the one that I lost that I thought was disaster. And so it was like, I get it. I get it now. I've just got to be obedient. I've got to get out of my own way, quit squeezing the puppy so tightly it can't breathe, and just trust and take the next step.
That might be the title of this podcast. Quit squeezing the puppy. Oh, that's great advice. Definitely great advice. Could not agree more. So that probably sounds a little unconventional to some people. What else? What's something else that you believe to be true about business that some people would say, that's a little unconventional, maybe even crazy?
That's a loaded question. There's a lot of things I've learned that I think I knew better before I started my own business with my wife that I now know differently. I think one thing is that success is defined by your definition of success. It's not an image that you see on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or any of those things. It's not what everybody else thinks you should be or do. It's important for you to determine what success is for you, and don't worry about anybody else. If you're happy and you're content and you're doing what your purpose is and what you're driven to do, then be successful in that and accept what that is and be content. I think the other thing would be that success and failure, in just in the true definition, are not very far apart. There's a book I read years ago called The Tipping Point. Everything or you can think about it like boiling water. What do you have when you have 211 degree water? You've got hot water. What is it when it's 212? It's boiling, and it changes everything of the ability of that water. So it's a degree off, and there's a lot of truth to that. So success and failure are not far apart. A lot of it has to do with your mindset. If you believe you can, you will, and if you don't believe it, then you can have some hard times, I'm afraid. And I'm not speaking that on anybody. I just that may not be true in every case. It's just what I found to be true for me. And maybe I would say probably starting a business, if you're new in it, we bring in the education and the experience that we have to date. And I read a really good book. I've turned into more of a reader since I've been a business owner than I ever have. Become more of a passion of mine. My wife might laugh at that and says, "Oh, 9 books a year, what a passion!" But that's a lot for me from where I was. But I think I read a book called The E-Myth, and the E in that title stands for entrepreneur. And it was a really good book for me to read. And one of the premises of that book, it was talking about people in their trade or their craft, when they're working for someone else, become really good. I thought I was the best, project manager on the planet almost. Had a lot of confidence. I was really good at it. Got a lot out of it. What I learned from that book was that, most people, when they come from that environment, are really good technicians, I think is the word it used. Tactician. Yeah, it was technician, I believe. And I went into starting my business thinking, they do this wrong. They do that wrong. I could make this better. I can be more efficient than that. or wasting money here. I've got all these ideas of how I'm going to be better. And then you start with those ideals in mind, and you want to implement them. And then what is it? Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the mouth, and that's very true. You don't know what's coming. You don't know where that next punch is coming from. You just know what you know. And you learn really quickly that there's more to it than just being a really good technician, a really good project manager, a really good superintendent or estimator or whatever your discipline is. And you got to be willing to learn. And so I would say that one of the other things, it's not as much about what you know, it's about how much you're willing to learn and adapt that will dictate your success.
Let's talk about your statement that success and failure aren't really that far apart. Explain that a little bit. I think I understand what you're saying, but can you give an example?
Going back to the example that we spoke about earlier about that paradigm shift I had from our business to be a steward of his business, that little space, it's the same concept of the end goal is there in both of those statements, but there's a shift in mindset from mine to his. And whether it's that analogy or another one, what I'm just trying to get across to people is that there, it can be that simple, that you just have a mindset change from I think I can, or from I think I can't to I think I can, and believing you can. I heard something one time too about mindset. Think about it like channels on a TV. You choose what you tune into. And back in the day, Todd, you're old enough as well as I am. Some of the younger listeners may not know, but we used to have TVs that had a clicker on them that you could change the channel, and you physically had to turn the dial. Well, if you wanted to watch nature shows and you're on National Geographic Channel or whatever, we didn't have that back in the day, but I'm just saying, if you wanted to watch that and you turn it to the National Geographic Channel. But if you want to watch a basketball, football game, and you don't get up and change the channel from the nature show, you're going to still be watching the nature show. So my point is we choose what channel we tune into. And if your mindset is stuck on the National Geographic Channel and you don't mentally, physically, intentionally change the channel to the sports show, you're going to be watching nature all day. So the point is that if you stay in a negative mindset, thinking you can't, hoping you change, hope doesn't change the channel. You have to physically, mentally, emotionally choose to think positively. And when you start making those choices on a daily basis, it's just a click of the channel. So that's what I'm talking about, that it's not that far apart. It might be on the other side of the dial, but it's still one twist of the hand. So but you have to choose. It's a choice. That space between success and failure is a choice about your mindset and the discipline to follow through.
Yep. That makes perfect sense. That makes me think about one of the more pivotal realizations, mindset shifts that I had about probably in 2016. I think it was late 2016. I was faced with this decision. I started this podcast, was trying to figure out how to turn it into a business, but really had no idea how to do that. And I read the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Great one.
And up until that point, I thought success was based on all of these factors outside of me: luck, the economy, natural ability, DNA, something I had no control over. And my big takeaway, I think the secret that book talks about is that it's really all about perseverance. Mm-hmm. And it's when you decide what you want and you just don't quit, you'll get there. And I remember reading that thinking, oh my gosh, I've been wrong all along. I kept thinking, specifically, I would think, if I had an idea, well, I'll try this. And if it didn't work, that meant it was the wrong idea, or I didn't have what it takes, or It wasn't the right thing to do, the right timing, all these other things. And then I realized that's just wrong. It's the answer is if I have an idea and there's something I want, some result or outcome that I want, if I just don't quit, I'll figure it out and it'll happen. And that was so liberating. And it was a little tough because it requires you to take ownership for all those wasted years. But yeah, I see exactly what you mean, how success and failure aren't that far apart. Just a little subtle shift in perspective, switching the channel, looking at things differently, it really can change everything. So
I will say though, but until you choose to change that channel physically, mentally, until you choose that channel, the feeling of success and failure feel a mile away.
Yeah.
When you're in that place of failure or what you perceive as failure or struggle, it feels forever away from success. And when you turn the channel mentally to belief instead of doubt and worry and stress, and let the stress go and focus on the positive things and focus on what you can control, and don't worry about the things that might happen because they haven't happened yet. I learned I carried way too much anxiety and fear and worry and dread about what might happen. There's a lot of things that might happen. But every minute you're spending time worrying about what might happen is 1 minute you're not having the next action that's going to produce success.
Yep. Great stuff. Speaking of success, you've been working really hard for the last year and a half or so on your business, and things have changed pretty dramatically. How much or what has changed in your business in the last year or year and a half? And then what have been the keys to those changes?
No, absolutely. There's a lot of change that's happened in the last year and a half. Just to get through some data, some positive things in the last 12 months, I would say. We've increased our revenue by 26% 1 year over the next. In the last year, we've increased our profitability by 45%.
Wow.
As a percentage. We've solidified our field team and created individual accountability for their specific responsibilities and define those roles. We have a clear communication path between our in-office project manager, Stephen, and our field managers in the field. And everybody knows what's expected. I think the reasons for that, I give you a lot of credit for helping us with this, and it kind of goes back to the success and failure not being far apart. When you're not being successful, you feel forever away. And that's when I reached out to you. I think it was in August or September of 2019. And we had a little bit of success coming from a really dark place. And we were kind of out of the ditch, but we weren't driving in the lane. We were kind of on the road, half in the ditch, half on the road. I think in an analogy, so I apologize. Everything's a word picture to me. But I reached out to you and we talked and just I needed some help, and I'd found your podcast. And I think the thing that for me was great about your podcast was coming from the residential market. I could find tons of podcasts on, not that they were all nearly as good as yours, Todd, but on residential construction, and which was great because I knew that industry. I came from that industry. That's where I started, and I appreciate it and I like it. But I'm sitting here trying to grow a niche business outside of that we're not really a commercial contractor, and we're definitely not a residential contractor. What do I do? And so you had a different spin on some things with your background in commercial construction and project management. And I was delving in this world of kind of straddling both and working on some commercial projects, and they have processes and procedures that are different than what I ever saw, in residential construction. At least my experience, you could be a builder, a project manager, a superintendent, a field manager, a site supervisor, any of those titles, and it's the same thing, or they're different. There was no distinction. So I think what I realized was that in the commercial, and this was enlightening to me just because I never came up through the commercial side, was that a project manager has a specific role. A superintendent is a specific thing. An estimator does this, a project engineer does that. And you get into those scopes. And I was like, man, it's like being a nurse or a nurse's aide or a doctor or an ophthalmologist. They're specific to their trade. And once I learned that, it really helped kind of structure our business in a way that was more manageable. And you really enlightened us with the podcast. Then we brought you in for a deep dive here in McKinney, as you spoke about earlier. I think it was early March. I think we canceled it right before the Ice-Mageddon challenge of February happened. And that was a good call on you rescheduling. You would have out of McKinney for a lot longer than you wanted if you didn't.
That would have been a rough trip. No power, nothing but ice, no water. Yeah. Sorry to bail out on you back. That was like Valentine's Day weekend.
It was well planned. And but anyway, you helped us sit down with me and Reagan, and really define what we called success, what we wanted to define success as, and come up with a game plan to strategize how we get there. And I am going to circle all the way back to where I started about that success and failure. When we were in that place, success seemed so far away. And by getting some structure and help from you to lay out a plan, break it down to root cause problems, apply. I'm a student of yours, Todd. I remember a lot of things that I hear audibly, and the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, was pivotal for me. I'm probably going to botch this, but what can you get 80% result from 20% of the effort? Focus on that first, And so there were 2 or 3 things that we could tackle immediately that fixed 80% of the problems. And we did that, and it got 80% better. And now we're on to the next big things that we're going to fix the next 80%. But that breaking that down and putting it in bite-sized chunks and bite-sized pieces really, really helped me close that gap from failure and success. It was like, oh, I do this, I do that, and stick to the process, and just follow through. And it's amazing if you just stick to the process and you stick to the plan, you stick to the goal, stick to the mission of what you laid out as your plan, how success quickly advances on you.
Yeah. So it sounds like there were a few things that you did that would fall into that 80-20 category. What were some of the things that you can point to that you would say, well, those were really maybe the lead dominoes for success?
For sure. I think the number one thing was us nailing our handoff, as you called it, the pre-construction list, and just getting it from our estimating manager into a budget and into purchase orders or co-construct and into somebody that's going to determine what the submittals are, get those submittals approved. This is where we kind of fall in that niche business, because in the residential game, you really don't have a whole lot of formal submittals. You have selections, which are submittals, but there's not a formal process to it, typically. And we formalized it, and we put specific tasks that are going to happen. We put it into a template and who's responsible. And now when we hand off projects, they're ready to be handed off. Questions are eliminated, and we're managing forward instead of walking backwards to gather more information and then take 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. It's just, that was the pivotal one that we had to nail first. I think that and the other thing was not solving the problems for only today. Like, what is your current fire? Like, you have to determine that. And everybody, I always get frustrated when I hear people say, well, where do you want to be in 5 years? I'm like, I'm trying to get to next week, and that's how you feel. But how you get through next week is you plan for down the road. And if you look a year or 2 years down the road for where you want to be then, the solutions you come up with now will serve you a year or two from then. But if you just focus on the problem today, you may put a Band-Aid on something to get temporary relief, but you're not fixing the root cause. You can spend a lot of money hiring people, hiring the wrong talent to have relief. And then you create a new problem because now you've hired somebody for a temporary pain. And in 6 to 9 months, they're beyond their depth. And you're now having to let them go to find somebody else to fix what the real problem was. And that's you don't want to do that to people. You don't want to do that to employees. And that's just having vision as an owner, looking far enough out in advance that you can anticipate some of those challenges that are coming your way.
Yeah. Speaking of hiring people, one of the big takeaways from our deep dive in McKinney back in March was it became clear that you needed to hire a pretty high-level professional project manager. And you had some reservations or had some concerns, not about the individual, but as you thought about, all right, I need to hire a high-level project manager. What were some of the things that were holding you back from doing that? Or what were some of the concerns you had about making that move?
Oh, yeah, that was real for me. Limiting beliefs of myself, I think, is definitely was there. I remember one of your podcasts, I don't remember the number, but you had talked about some type of analogy of let's say you're an 8 at project management and you're a 5 at estimating, but you believe you've got to be the smartest person at everything in your business. You'll never hire anybody that's better than a 5 at estimating, and you'll never hire anybody that's better than an 8 at project management. So you put a lid on your potential. And that stuck out with me. But I didn't see it for myself. You had to help me see it. And you called me out on it one day in one of our calls. And you're like, that might be a limiting belief that I haven't even told you the root cause here, but the root cause was that I was fearful that I was going to hire somebody that had experience that I didn't have and didn't understand and wouldn't know how to manage. And so it was a limiting belief that I couldn't navigate this because I didn't understand the world that he came from in the commercial side. And I just wouldn't know how to lead him. I wouldn't know how to, or her, it ended up being him. Stephen's been great with us. Very thankful he came on board. And it's really been pivotal to our progress and our change. But I think that was it. Definitely getting out of my own way and realizing it's not about me, but you want to surround yourself with people that have experiences that you don't have, because yours are limited, mine are limited. And if we do that, there's only going to be so far you can go with your skill set. And I need people that have different skill sets around me that are stronger at accounting, that are stronger at project management, that are stronger at estimating than I am.
So what's the truth about your ability to lead somebody who has more experience in one specific part of the business than you do? Or let's be honest, if they're better at something, what's the truth about being able to lead somebody who's better at something than you are?
I think that you got to be humble. You got to be teachable. And I think the truth is from that is that you realize that all of their strengths aren't yours and yours aren't theirs. And so when they come to you, if you hire the right person, they're going to be pretty humble too. And they're going to recognize your strengths and realize, man, he's really good at this. I can learn something from him too. They're as awkward as you were. They don't know the ins and outs that you've already figured out. So when they come in, yes, they have this tremendous skill set that maybe you don't have. But they're, I hate to use the word weaker, but they're less experienced in other areas. And so you can impart wisdom in different ways, and it's a give and take, and you can glean from them and they can glean from you. And it becomes a really good relationship of teamwork, I guess. Really, I think that's what I would say the truth is. It creates an environment for teamwork.
Yeah. And there's a limiting belief out there that sounds something like, well, I'm a small business. Nobody who's good is going to want to work for me. What do I have to offer as a small business Why would somebody who's a good project manager or a designer or an experienced superintendent or fill in the blank, they're just not going to want to work for me. So why bother? Why even try?
Mm-hmm.
What's the truth about the attractiveness of a small business to really good people out there? Like, are they attracted? Are they out there? Are there really good people looking to come to work for a small business or not?
Oh, absolutely. And that yeah, definitely. I had that fear, that limiting belief too. Like, why are these guys going to come work with me? Commercial PMs that are building, multi-million dollar buildings, they make X. I can get on any of these websites and see what the average, salary is. I can't afford that much money. We have a little office out in the country. It's not your typical office setting, but it works. And, I had all these things in my head about why we weren't good enough to attract that kind of talent. And what I learned is that there are a lot of people that want out of the corporate world. They're tired of the rat race. They're tired of the frustration and doing things that don't make sense because somebody in a different state told them that's the way we need to do it. And they've never built in that state that they're in, and just want a quality of life that money is not everything. And they will exchange a lot of times quality of life for money and a good work environment where they enjoy coming to work and are fulfilled. And I play a role in that. But if you hire the right people, they'll do the work if you provide the environment. And you can't make everybody fulfilled if they're not willing to do their work. But if you find the right people and provide the right environment, they'll be fulfilled. And I think that's what most people want. They want to go somewhere where they're valued. They want to go somewhere where they feel they have a purpose and they move the needle and they make a difference. And nothing is worse. And I've been there. I've worked with large publicly traded home builders before and getting, commands from a different state. And, we don't typically have snow load in Texas. We don't need to design these houses this way, and it's just, some of it was really weird. And it's frustrating. And it's like, man, we're spinning our wheels and working so hard and we could be making more progress. So there's a lot of people out there that value the small business and what you have to offer. So don't limit yourself to think nobody will come here. No, we're not enticing enough. I think that's the word. I didn't think I could entice talent.
Yep. And that's very consistent with what I found. I work with people from all over the US and Canada, and most of them are able to find really good people, and these people are leaving bigger companies and coming to work. Heck, I did the same thing. I used to work for a Fortune 50 company, and I got out and went to work for a really small business. So they're out there, definitely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks for opening the kimono there and being transparent, because
you bet.
I think a lot of people, if they're being honest, that's what's going on in their head. Is they think we need to hire people, but I'm never going to be able to attract or entice. I like that word. I'm not going to be able to entice quality people. So why bother? So maybe what they do is they just lower the bar and they keep hiring 4s and 5s when they really need a 9 or a 10, and the cycle just continues. So great advice. So we've been working together for a couple of years now. Let me ask you this. What was the problem that you were having that led you to contact me about working together, if you can remember?
Yeah, I think it was just that we were working really, really hard, tons of work, a vision. I just knew in my heart that what we were going to do was going to work. The vision I had for the business, I knew we could be successful. So I was passionate about it. And we were working tremendously hard, and we had good people working for us. But the procedures and the systems that we were functioning in were broken enough that we just weren't making the profit that we needed to make. And I knew at some point, if we didn't figure that out, the good people we had would leave, and I'd be left to downsize or figure it out and go to a job, meaning not necessarily that I would have to close my business. That would have been a possibility, I guess, if it went really bad, but that I'd have to go back to just doing it myself. And the vision I had for my business was to grow a company. And we, I think that, recently we did a meetup in Sarasota, and, something kind of popped in my head as we were talking. And I think this speaks to this point, was that, we were talking to a lot of home builders and remodelers, and, it hit me like, do you want to grow? Do you want to build houses as your business, or do you want to build a business that builds houses? And there's a difference. It's that tip. It's kind of like the step between success and failure. And I'm not saying if you want to build houses, you're going to fail. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is that you got to decide if you're going to grow a business or you're going to build houses, or you're going to build a wall, or you're going to do utility work. What do you want? And there's a difference between building houses for income for yourself and growing a business that builds houses. And you got to decide what you want. And if you want to have something that has the new word that I learned from Stuart Pageant, terminal value, that will have a value when you want to hand it down or sell the business one day, you need to build something with structure that's desirable for somebody that they would want, that they can step in and run. And you need to do that with systems, processes, and we were short in that, and I needed help. It wasn't hard, but I needed help getting my head around how to make that happen, because it was so overwhelming at the time, because it seemed so difficult, and like we had so many challenges to overcome. But one bite at a time, 80-20 rule, a little planning, and it happens pretty quickly.
Yeah. So what did that frustration feel like back then as you were trying to solve that problem?
A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, freely admit some tears, frustration, and a private moment here or there, fear, just feeling not like a good provider, a good leader, all these things, these negative emotions that come from perceived failure. And it was hard. I mean, I think that's the thing that's when you kind of introduced me today on the podcast, you said, with the little rehearsing, you got me on the podcast, and that was it. I was like, I sometimes still wonder, what do I have to offer people? Like why do they want to listen to me? Why would anybody want to hear what I have to say? I haven't arrived yet. I haven't done anything amazing, but, and you're good at pointing me back to make a list of what you've accomplished over the last 6 months. Do this, do that. And when I take the time to do that, I look back and I'm like, man, how far we've come. And we have done a lot. But sometimes when you're so focused on being a problem solver, you got to lift your head up. You got to look past your problems, and you got to look at where you came from. And we've solved a lot of things. So, I think that's it. I think that was it for me, is like, man, if I could take a little time, share an experience from just like when I would go on walks in the evening and I'd listen to your podcast and I'd hear another builder or contractor talking about something, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. This is a lonely place. It's a lonely island to live on sometimes. And, it can be really, really hard. So I want to encourage anybody out there, if you're in that lonely, stressful, agonizing place, I get it. And there are a lot of people out there that get it. Most people that go through this do go through some of that at some point. And you're not alone. And, people like Todd, myself, the mastermind groups, there's resources out there for you to find people you can connect with. And that was a challenge. Who do you talk to? Who do you reach out to for help? It's like the challenge I always found was like, okay, I'll call, I'm just being generic here, just making something up. I'll call my neighbor and tell him about my hard day at work and how we lost a $1 million bid, or, we worked for 6 months on, this job that was $1.5 million and we made $10,000. And I spent all that opportunity cost and overhead and didn't come away. Or we built something wrong and had to rip it down. And because what I found was, and this is not meant negatively towards anybody, but until you've been there, you don't know. And sometimes people that don't run their own business don't understand the revenue isn't what you take home. They just hear, oh, you had $1 million job, or, oh, you did this much last year. And they think, oh my, you got to be killing it. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And, that's not what it's about, but trying to find somebody to talk to that you can speak freely about things that you don't want to air to the public. That's important. You need somebody that gets it, that won't judge you and isn't going to look, with the side eye at you when you say a number, because it's part of the context of your problem.
Yeah. That's one of the most consistent things I hear from business owners, construction business owners, is it's like an island. It's a lonely island, and I don't have anybody to talk to.
Island of ownership.
Yeah. And then that's another thing that I've heard consistently from people who've come together in a mastermind group or at a live event. Afterward, they say, it's so nice to hear we're not the only ones dealing with this stuff. We're not the only ones dealing with personnel issues or cash flow or chaos or customers who are walking all over us or whatever it is. There's nothing new under the sun. If you're dealing with it, pretty good chance 1,000 other people are dealing with it too. It's just the bad thing is you and those 1,000 people are dealing with it separately, all banging your head against the wall. And the beauty of a mastermind group or the live meetup is, let's get together. Let's share some ideas. We don't all have to bang our head against the wall separately. And heck, somebody's probably already cracked the code on this thing. Let's figure it out. Let's avoid the head banging, and let's look for solutions that have already been proven out and just start using them. So yeah, good stuff. So you were dealing with a lot of frustration, and I've been there. I know exactly what you're talking about. But take us to the moment when you realized that all the hard work you were doing as a result of the coaching program was actually working to solve your problem.
Yeah, and I think I spoke to this a little bit a minute ago. I struggle with sometimes when I struggle with sometimes looking at the progress we've made, because I'm still trying to solve new problems. And I think we'll always be doing that. I don't think you ever stop. You never get it complete. But it's good to go back and reflect on where you came from. And so I have a harder time sometimes saying, hey, this is it. This is when it happened. But I would say that one of the things that really helped us was the deep dive in identifying those things. I think it was when I realized after getting Stephen, our project manager, in, I didn't feel that we had the competency in the field that I could completely step away from that to go do the things I needed to do as a business owner, growing a business, the more administrative systemizing tools. And it all takes time. And so I had my feet and hands in every area of the business. And I'm not saying that you don't ever need to get them out. I was so divided, I didn't have time to do anything effectively. And I wouldn't say anything, but a lot of things, the efficiency wasn't there. And so I think when we got that handoff nailed down, hired a competent project manager, and organized and clearly defined everybody's roles. And then I realized, this is working without me. That was a moment I was like, I could kind of breathe a little bit and be like, now what do I do? And I knew exactly what to do, because we charted it out in our deep dive and some of our coaching calls and worked on those action plans and tried to implement what we did. And sometimes I'm an immediate gratification guy by nature. It's it can be a good thing and it can be a negative thing. And sometimes when it works negatively against me, it's because I want it to change right now. And I lack patience and discipline sometimes in the areas I need to stay focused in. And kind of that fireman syndrome. I want to go solve the problem and move on and get on to the next thing. So I think that it was that moment that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to go solve a problem in the field today. I didn't get called with a customer that was upset because, we did something wrong, or we weren't on site, or we didn't do that. I mean, it was being managed. And that's very freeing. And you can take a deep breath and you're like, And if I'm completely honest, I probably got complacent there for 2 or 3 weeks. I was like, oh, I'll take a little time and just kick back and, do a little bit. And then you kind of wake yourself up and you're like, okay, I got to go back to being the owner here and get back. But, after you do it for 8 years, you're a little tired too. So I think those moments, I think that happens to everybody from time to time, where you take a deep breath and you take a little step away. And that's okay, because you've even said it, management through absence sometimes is not a bad thing. And people will figure out the answers to a point, but they still need to be led. And I don't know if that answered the question or not, but that's probably the point in time that I realized that this is working.
Yeah, that's perfect. So how is life different now after the work that you've been doing over the past year or two?
A lot more free time if I'm disciplined with my time. I struggle personally with procrastination a lot. I can get a lot done in a little bit of time, and I'm really good at it. And so sometimes I think I work better under pressure, or most procrastinators do, or just the way my brain's wired. And so I kind of like that pressure, and I like being, put in that situation for whatever sick reason. I don't know. But the idea of let's methodically plan this out and do it sometimes eludes me. So if I'm disciplined with my time and I stay focused on the plan, I have free time, but the free time is different than the time before when I would procrastinate, because it's guilt-free. I don't have that whirling around. I still have to do this. I still have to do that. I've got to get to this. I've got to get to that. You always have a list, but there are other things that you need to be doing as a procrastinator that should have already been done. I don't have that list in my head nearly as often. Every now and then I still have to fight that and change my channel back to where it needs to be. But I think that's one of the main things. Stress level is lower. Is it stress-free? No. It's a battle that you have to, it goes back to mindset. What are you going to choose to focus on? Are you going to focus on the stress? Are you going to focus on the maybes that might happen? This could be the results. Or are you going to focus on the next thing you can do to get out of that situation, or resolve the situation, or prevent it the next time? Just don't stay in the place of questions and maybes. That's a bad place to live.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I think as far as procrastination goes, we're all wired about the same way, and we need urgency. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things to be prepared for when you put these systems in place and you get your business to the point you want it to be is you need to be prepared for that, because that urgency won't be there. That if you do it right, you won't have that urgency of, I got to make some stuff happen to make payroll in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That urgency won't be there. So it's something it's a new skill to be prepared for. And some people, they aren't prepared. And when they get to that point, then they go create more fires, or they let things develop into fires, because that's the only way they know how to get stuff done. So it definitely takes some discipline to maintain success, is probably a good way to put it.
Well, and I think that's the point that you say a lot. You want to eliminate chaos. You say that frequently in your podcast, and I wanted to eliminate chaos. The problem is, with a person like me, I sometimes thrive on chaos, because I feel like I can be the hero to get us through the chaos. But it requires a lot of effort in places that I don't need to spend my time. And eliminate the chaos, but just know your pursuit and know your purpose enough to know what your next agenda item is, so you're not feeling useless.
Yeah, I think that's key, is to have some initiative to work on, some next part of the business. It could be a side project, philanthropy, who knows, but have something to occupy yourself. You need to have some sort of stress. Not all stress is bad. And in fact,
I don't want to convey that I'm not busy.
Right. Yeah. And you just don't want to be, you don't want chaos, and you don't want to be in panic mode. I think there's a difference between being busy and panicked. Panic mode. Yeah. So let's talk about the crack the code. This is the crack the code segment. What is one specific part of your business that's working well for you that you feel like you've cracked the code on and you'd be willing to share about?
Yeah. There's a lot of things I think we've kind of cracked the code on, but I would say some we probably already talked about, but I would say sales. I think in our industry as a whole, this is just my opinion. I don't have any data to back this up. You may, or you may disagree with me, but I think as an industry as a whole, the construction industry overall sucks at selling, and we don't take enough credit for what we do. We don't ask what we're worth. We don't, by nature, I think most of us are more blue collar people than white collar people. And there's an honor code. And, I heard one guy tell me, one guy, he said, I asked him, a contractor, he was it doesn't matter what he did, but anyway, he was a contractor, and, his favorite thing to say, I was like, well, I'll get you a contract. I'll send you a proposal and we'll get you started. He said, no. And he said, I'll just shake your hand. And I said, okay. He said, way I've always lived, handshake's always stronger than a pencil. And, meaning that your honor is your word is worth more than any paper you sign. And that's, kind of how a lot of people in Texas talk. So that's what we live with. But so I think a lot of us are wired that way, the honor and all that. And so we have a hard time being assertive enough as individuals and confident enough in our ability to go say, hey, no, this is what this is worth. And get out of your limiting beliefs of, they'll never pay that. They might not, but the next person you talk to will. And you got to figure out that you got to figure that out for yourself. But I think selling is something we crack the code on. We've increased our sales, tremendously. I didn't speak to this earlier. I told you our revenue went up 26% over the last year, but our sales. We have 95% sold starting next year, 2022, of the revenue we're going to perform in 2021. And that's a change for us. We've always been chasing sales from behind, but I think we've cracked the code and we've gotten in front. The market helps. I don't want to discount that. It's not all me and Waterton, but when you get your processes in place, and you become the easy button for your customers, and you eliminate chaos for them and challenges for them, they want to use you. And I think I can talk about this for a long time because I think it's something that I don't go try to sell people. I have tried to tap into the confidence that I have, that I know when I go meet with somebody to try to close a deal or sell a deal or convince them that they ought to give us a try, I've got to have enough confidence to know what we're worth and make promises that I'm willing to stand behind, and then build the processes to support it and get it there. So be real with people, be humble with people. Don't go in thinking sales is about arrogance. It's not. That rarely works, honestly. Be honest and tell them, I haven't ever done that before. That's okay. But say, hey, but I have done this and I have done this, and I have full confidence with our systems in place. We're your guys. And this is not a hard challenge for us. If you're worried about it, what you fear. I mean, I've told people before, hey, I need this sale. I don't know any other way to tell you, but we need to get this across the finish line, and I need your help. If you'll trust me, you've got my assurance that we're going to take care of you. And it works. So, and I don't want to, play on people's emotions, but at certain points in our journey, I had to be real with people and be like, I need this. Like, tell them. The other thing is just be genuine. Don't be fake. Be honest and real. I think those all go together, and include the wins and losses. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has a bad job. Everybody has a bad project from time to time. And if you had one go bad, own it, accept it, ask how you can improve it. And when you lose a job or you miss a bid, ask them, was there something that I did that prevented you from going with us? What was it? And if you're humble enough to learn from that, they'll tell you, and we lost a bid a month ago and it went to somebody else. And, we thought we were the low bidder on it, and thought we were going to be signed up. We're told we were going to be signed up. And then I was told, oh, no, it went to somebody else. I'm like, oh my gosh, how can you do that, at this point? And what I had to ask was, we had done previous projects for that customer before. And my first reaction was to get defensive and be like, well, how can you do that if we were low and, it's a $800,000 project? And I was like, that's a pretty big bite, and to have it taken away like that. And I got defensive. And what I called them back after my initial conversation, and I apologized to them. I said, look, I was wrong in my approach. And I said, I didn't appreciate how this went down. But I said, the question I should have asked was, there something that we have done on our previous projects that precluded us from getting this work? That's the question I should have asked. But I called him back and I had the conversation and told him I'd be willing to bet you that the next job that they get will come our way.
That's great advice. Yeah. Yeah. Don't get defensive. Just something this guy's been very guilty of when you miss a deal, and ask. So what's my favorite question is, so what would it take? What would it take for us to get the next one? Or what could we have done differently? There's so much information that gets left on the table and lost at that part of the cycle because we don't go back and ask, what could we have done differently? Or what did we miss? I've been the owner's rep on commercial projects, and I would be glad to tell people because I want them to be successful. I want my projects to be successful. If somebody would have asked me, I would tell them, hey, your team you put forward, they weren't the right guys, or you guys completely missed what we were looking for. So that's great advice, is when you advice for getting the sale, but then also, what do you do when you swing and miss? How do you still get some value out of that? Good stuff.
Those are the questions we have to ask more than the sale, right? Because I think that's going to lead you to the answer of why you're missing sales. I mean, you want to know why, and you go home and you leave and drive home from your meeting and stressing about why and what if and how, what are we going to do on the next one? Well, they might just tell you the answer if you just ask them.
They might just tell you if you ask, or you can just speculate and come up with, fabricate reasons in your head that, that make probably stroke your ego and your conscience and blame it on somebody else. But it takes some self-awareness and some emotional intelligence to go and say, hey, listen, I know we're not perfect, but what would it take, or what did we miss here? What do we need to do differently next time? And that's a brilliant piece of advice right there that I hope people take. So you mentioned the live meetup. We had a live meetup in Sarasota, Florida back in November of 2021. Here we are in December. And it was a small group of construction business owners that got together and we talked about a lot of stuff. But I'm curious, for you, what was the biggest value that you went home with from that event? Like what was the thing you took away from the live meetup that was most valuable to you?
I really think relationships came together, and we have kind of a niche business. So I understand that there's not, thousands upon thousands of land development hardscape businesses out there. We're kind of a rare breed, but so we don't really find, we're kind of a round peg, in a land of square holes. So I get that. And so we're not going to fit everywhere. But one thing in common with everybody at the meetup is they're all going through the same struggles. They're all going through maybe different circumstances with different clients. And maybe they're dealing with homeowners and selections. And I'm dealing with, developers not having projects graded properly when we mobilize. And, there's a lot of different things. So the circumstances may be different, but the root of everybody's situation is the same. And when we get in a group of people, number one, that can speak freely, that are like-minded, that are fighting the same battles you are mentally, emotionally, it is, I don't want to say you want to go that it's not a wallowing session in your own self-pity. That's not what we're talking about. But it is comforting to know that you're not alone. And it is comforting to know like, hey, they're going through this too. Because sometimes when you don't know that, you just feel isolated and like you're screwing it all up. You've done it wrong. Why is it this hard? And you see everywhere in society that everybody else figured it out. Why can't I figure it out? Those are things that the world will plant in your brain. And when you go there and you see these good people, good, hardworking people that have passion for what they do and are sometimes struggling with the same things you are, it's just really enlightening. It's humbling to see people struggling and seeing people succeed. I think that's the thing that I noticed was that in that group, and I don't mean this in any like I've arrived or anything like that, but I think when you go to some of these groups, you see people that are just starting out. And then you have people like myself that have been doing it for 8 years, and maybe not that we're more successful because that's relative to them or to me, but we're further down the path. That might be a better way to say it. We're further down the path than they are and have some different experiences than they've experienced yet. And then I go to like John, he's been in business for 30 years or more, doing his business. And what can I glean from that guy? A whole lot, what can the guy that started his business 6 months ago glean from him? A whole lot. But what can I glean from somebody starting out? Because there's a lot that I can gain from that. But one of the things I found really interesting is that I always wondered what am I going to get out of building walls? Like what purpose does that do other than make money? And I'm learning that the longer I do this, one of the things I really enjoy is encouraging other people. Not that I got it all figured out, but I know the pain that it can be to do it on your own. And when I could go to that meetup and encourage other people going through things I've already been through, and then I can be encouraged by people that have gone through things that I'm going through now, it's like, okay, yeah, you have the perspective to know, okay, this is temporary, and yeah, this can be fixed. That's why those meetups are so important. And the content's great. I mean, if you listen to Todd's podcast, you get a lot of the content there, but he packages up in a way that is very accessible and immediately usable. Breakout sessions were great. You actually do some real work in there to get the wheels turning and get a plan of action that you can take back to your team and start implementing and finalize the plan when you go back home. So yeah, there's a lot of things about the meetup that are great, but the fellowship, the friends you make. I mean, I've talked to 4 or 5 of the guys at least one time since we left about a month ago.
Yeah. I'm convinced the relationships are the best part. Definitely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And then everything else that you've shared, I want to be cognizant of your time. You've been incredibly helpful with everything you've shared. One last question. If people want to connect with you or find out more about your company, maybe apply for a job, I don't know, where are some places people can go to find out more about where you're at, find out more about your business, and maybe connect with you?
Yeah, I would just point them to our website, watertonconstruction.com, WATERTON, construction spelled out.com. We also have a Waterton Construction Group Facebook page, and we're on LinkedIn as well. So look up Waterton Construction on LinkedIn. That's probably the best avenues to find us. And before we go, Todd, I just want to thank you too. You've been a great mentor and leader for me, and you got a real skill set for breaking big problems down into small ones and really helping people like me that love to crisis manage, focus on the details to get systems in place. And if anybody out there is looking for a good coach, Todd's the guy. I can't sing his praises enough. He's been tremendously helpful for us in our business.
Well, I really appreciate that. It's been a pleasure. And I appreciate the time you've shared with us today. Congratulations on the success in your business. And thanks for opening the kimono
absolutely. Always.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Thanks, Michael. I'll see you on our next call, man.
Sounds good. Look forward to that next old fashioned together. Take care.
You got it. Hopefully in McKinney, Texas.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd.
As always, I hope you take some actionable advice away from this conversation. Take one thing that you can actually implement on. Pick one thing at least that you want to show up in your business and execute on that thing so you actually get some results out of this. If you would like to join a group of like-minded construction business owners, the mastermind group that we talked about could be a good fit for you. It's the Builder Mastermind Group. You can get all of the details over at buildermastermindgroup.com. If you would like to work with me in my one-on-one coaching program, then head over to constructionleadingedge.com, click the button to schedule a free strategy call with me, and we'll set up a time to talk. As always, I appreciate the ratings and the reviews and the messages. If you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. If you could leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or the podcast player of your choice, that would mean a lot to me, and it would help spread the word. And speaking of spreading the word, if there's somebody you know that would get some value out of this particular episode, please share it with them. Send them a text, share it straight from your podcast player. I would appreciate that, and they might appreciate it too. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Todd DeWalt from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermastermindgroup.com. See you next time. Remember, with Company Cam, there's no more second guessing about what's getting done or pestering your crews to send you pictures. Every photo and video your guys take at a job is automatically organized by location and instantly synced from the field to wherever you are. Now you'll know exactly what's happening across your company. Get started today at companycam.com/CLE. Don't forget to visit constructionleadingedge.com/curry, that's CURRI, to request a 15-minute demo or just sign up directly for a free $40 credit on your Curry account. Stay out of stores. Start using Curry for construction material delivery today. That's constructionleadingedge.com/CURRI.